Welcome to Lesson 14 in the 52 Life Lessons series. I'm Tim Borys, and I created this series to help you learn from the many costly mistakes and valuable lessons that I've learned throughout my life. And today's episode is about how I learned to use fear and doubt as powerful tools to action. Now, if you'd asked me years ago whether I was a fearful person, I would have confidently said no. I was the athlete, the entrepreneur, the energetic guy building businesses and pushing limits. Fearful? Pfft, not me. But that answer would have been incomplete at best. And at worst, it would have been delusional because fear was shaping my behavior far more than I realized. Some of it was obvious, like the cocktail party version. You know the scene, the music playing, there's like small groups of people that are gathered around, they're laughing. Everyone looks like they're connected and confident. And you're standing there holding your drink and pretending to check your phone while your brain scans the room for someone safe to talk to, someone that you know. That environment was a nightmare for me. It lit up my nervous system like a Christmas tree. I'd get a spike in heart rate, thoughts would start racing through my mind. My internal dialogue started spiraling into self flagellation every single time. It would say things like, "Don't say something stupid. They're not interested in you. Look, let's just leave. It's going to be less painful for everyone." And it felt real. It felt intense. It felt actually dangerous in some ways. What's fascinating is that neuroscience explains this perfectly. The amygdala, that little almond shaped part of your brain that's responsible for detecting threats, it doesn't differentiate well between physical danger and social risk. To your nervous system, being rejected by the tribe used to mean death. So even today, social discomfort can trigger a full stress response. Rising cortisol, your adrenaline kicks in, your thinking narrows towards protection. But that's not weakness. That's just your neural wiring. Research consistently shows another important fact. We are absolutely terrible at predicting how painful events will actually feel. Psychologists call this effective forecasting. And there's some great work by Daniel Gilbert. He's shown that we routinely overestimate how bad negative experiences will be, and we underestimate our ability to cope with them, which explains why the anxiety before a conversation is often far worse than the conversation itself. Because almost every time I pushed myself to walk up to someone and start talking, the outcome was neutral at worst, and most often it was fantastic. I had so many interesting conversations. I made unexpected connections, created new opportunities for my business. Yet that fear was loud, but it was totally wrong. Now, let's shift into business because this is where the fear for me was much more subtle and, well, I have to say, a lot more costly. I had a deep fear of rejection. And I don't mean just traditional sales. I mean promoting my business, talking about what I did, owning my accomplishments, telling people clearly how I felt and how I could help them. I continually downplayed myself. And here's a mindset I continue to shake my head at even today. For decades, most people didn't know that I was drafted by the New York Yankees. Yet I was really proud of it. But when it came up, I brushed it off. If someone mentioned it, I minimized it. In my head, I rationalized it as, well, I didn't make the major leagues, so it doesn't really count. I thought, oh, that sounds humble, right? But it wasn't humility. It was fear of being seen, fear of sounding arrogant, fear of not being worthy of that accomplishment, even fear of stepping into a bigger identity. And there's research on imposter syndrome that shows high achievers often discount their own accomplishments internally. They create qualifiers. They say, yes, but, or it wasn't that big of a deal. Other people have done more. That internal minimization shapes behavior, and behavior, it shapes outcomes. When I downplayed my experience, I reduced my perceived credibility. I reduced influence. I reduced opportunity. And more importantly, I reduced impact. My businesses have all been about helping people learn, grow, and thrive. And there were loads of people who could have benefited from the discipline, the resilience, and performance lessons that I learned from elite sport and entrepreneurship, but they couldn't fully see it because I wouldn't fully show it. That wasn't humility. That was avoidance disguised as virtue. And in coaching, we talk about a concept called strengths overdone. I often say that every strength or trait has an optimal zone. Confidence, when it's overdone, becomes arrogance. Drive overdone becomes burnout. Empathy overdone becomes lack of boundaries. Humility overdone becomes self-censorship. And this is where I really realized something bigger. This wasn't just about humility for me. It was about fear calibration. See, fear itself isn't the problem. Fear is just a signal. At the right level, fear sharpens awareness. It forces evaluation. It protects you. If you're about to walk a tightrope across the Grand Canyon, let's say, with no safety net, fear is your friend. Zero fear in that situation, it's not bravery, it's stupidity. But too much fear in situations where there's minimal actual risk, that's paralysis. Well, too much fear in the Grand Canyon situation is paralysis as well, because you can't move. But here's the key insight. Your brain often has trouble differentiating between those two scenarios. The fear of walking a tightrope across the Grand Canyon and the fear of speaking to a stranger at a cocktail party can trigger surprisingly similar physiological responses. The fear of promoting your business, the fear of asking your boss for a raise, the fear of owning your accomplishments in a grounded, grateful way. Your heart rate increases, your palms sweat, your thoughts narrow. The amygdala evolved to err on the side of caution from an evolutionary standpoint. It would rather give you a false alarm than to miss a real threat. But these days, the fear we experience in work and social environments is mostly old wiring. It's not a tiger going to attack you, yet we respond that way. It's simply visibility, it's judgment, it's identity expansion. Objectively, the risk is low to non-existent. Subjectively, your nervous system still reacts as if your survival is on the line. And remember this, high performers still feel fear. That's really important to understand. They don't eliminate fear, they calibrate it. They ask three simple questions, whether actually or subconsciously. And those questions are, what's the actual risk here? What are my capabilities? And what is the cost of inaction versus action? Once they've asked those questions, then they make a decision. But that's different from reacting. Making a decision is evaluation. In my business, fear of failure made me overly conservative. I avoided bold investments. I delayed scaling decisions. I called it strategy, but really it was just protection. And fear of success was just as powerful. Growth would have required me to delegate more, to grow into being a better leader, to release control, to step into a bigger identity. So I got stuck in what I now call the mediocrity trap. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't performing at the potential I had within me. I wasn't thriving. I was busy, but not being bold and taking calculated strategic risks. Fear kept me safe enough to survive, but not courageous enough to expand. And here's what the research consistently shows. And this is something I didn't know then, but I've subsequently learned. Avoidance strengthens fear. Exposure weakens it. Clinical psychology has demonstrated for decades that repeated intentional exposure is the most reliable way to recalibrate fear responses. When you act despite discomfort and you survive, Your brain updates its prediction model. Confidence, then, isn't a personality trait, it's accumulated evidence. It's the memory bank of times you acted while uncomfortable and came out intact. I saw this powerfully during one of the hardest seasons of my life. I mentioned on previous episodes that when my business was collapsing during COVID, the financial panic was dominating my thinking. My health was compromised at that time. Fear narrowed everything. Then I landed a small part-time contract. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't massive money, but it was a win. And almost overnight, my thinking expanded. My energy improved. My creativity returned. Yet nothing dramatic had changed externally. But I had taken action. And that action was a catalyst for a massive mindset shift. Research in the area of behavioral activation supports this. Action often precedes motivation. When you move, your emotional state follows. And we know that fear doesn't dissolve through rumination, it dissolves through motion. And this is where your human operating system matters. Mindset helps you question the story. Habits, they build repeated, courageous reps. Movement regulates your physiology. Fuel stabilizes your energy and your nervous system. When those pillars are strong, fear becomes data. When they're weak, fear becomes destiny. It seeps into every part of you. So here's the reflection. Questions to ask yourself. Is this fear protecting me from real danger? Or is it protecting me from growth? Because those are very different things. Too little fear, and you become reckless. Too much fear, and you become stuck. The goal is intelligent fear, enough to evaluate, not so much that you freeze. And remember, high performers still feel fear. They just don't let it decide what you're going to do. So I'll leave you with this. Where are you disguising fear as a virtue? Where are you playing it too safe? Where are you simply surviving instead of choosing to thrive? And remember that fear is not a stop sign. It's often a growth signal. Feel it, embrace it, then take smart action. And of course, let me know how it goes. We'll see you soon on the next episode.